Okay, we have a question that has come in from an institutional source in Washington, D.C., but before I ask that question, I want to give some background. And really, I want to just reflect back on when we began this series of Friday night webcasts. This was about 6 months ago, in the weeks immediately preceding the presidential elections of last year. And you decided to initiate these webcasts in order to put the truth of what happened in Benghazi on the table and to say what others would not say, including the Republican opposition to President Barack Obama, that this president was engaged in the worst cover-up possibly in the last 30 to 40 years since Watergate. And at the same time, you and Jeffrey Steinberg went to the National Press Club and delivered a high-profile press conference on the same issue to show leadership where others failed. Well, now here we are, 6 months later, a half a year later, and Benghazi has now once again surged back into the public eye and right onto Obama's doorstep. This week began with former governor of Arkansas, Huckabee, Mike Huckabee, saying that in his view, if the truth about Benghazi were to come out, this president would not serve out the remainder of his second term. He said that this might be going out on a limb, but the fact that it's now becoming so obvious that there was a concerted and deliberate attempt to mislead this country and its people and to lie to Congress means that when a president lies to the American people and is part of a cover-up, he cannot continue to govern. And he made the point that this is not a political issue. It goes to the very heart of the integrity of the United States government. On Wednesday of this week, there were very high-profile hearings in the House Government Reform and Oversight Committee, Chairman Iss's committee, where 3 whistleblowers came forward. Gregory Hicks, the former deputy chief of mission in Tripoli, Libya; Mark Thompson, who was acting assistant secretary of state for operations; and Eric Nordstrom, the former regional security officer for Libya. And a lot came out in that hearing, a lot of what had been previously suppressed, that troops had been ordered to stand down and not go to Benghazi to assist in the attacks that were ongoing there, that Greg Hicks was instructed by the State Department not to engage in private meetings with Congressman Chaffetz unless he had a minder, unless he had a State Department attorney with him. And also, after he objected to what Susan Rice said on the September 16th talk shows, that he had been demoted from his position as Deputy Chief of Mission to a low-level desk officer in Washington. One of the more significant questions that came up was posed by Congressman Farenthold, asking about why were we working with the February 17th Brigade, which was known to have substantial ties to Islamic extremists, including Al-Qaeda, and why were we depending on this militia to provide so-called security for our ambassador in Benghazi. So at the end of this hearing, Chairman Issa called for other whistleblowers to step forward. There are 137 co-sponsors on a resolution by Frank Wolf calling for a select committee on these events. Now even John Boehner joined the chorus, calling for an investigation into the events in Benghazi. And last but not least, very interestingly, today, Senator Inhofe from Oklahoma came out and said, look, if Benghazi is investigated fully, we will be seeing the I word, impeachment. So, and the person interviewing him asked him, do you mean impeachment? And he affirmed, yes, I indeed mean impeachment. He said the Benghazi issue surpasses Iran-Contra, surpasses Watergate, and could become the greatest cover-up in American history. So there's a lot more details to go through, but I think what's clear is that this is something that's not going to go away, and it's becoming now much, much more of a problem than I think Barack Obama would wish it to be. So the question that came in from an intelligence source in Washington is, in the aftermath of these hearings that happened in the Government Reform Committee on the Benghazi attacks, where the witnesses provided chilling firsthand accounts of what was clearly a terrorist attack, and also made clear that the Obama administration had covered up the truth of the attack, the question remains, what was going on, the deeper question, what was going on in Benghazi, and whether the Obama White House was conducting an illegal weapons smuggling operation to arm the Syrian rebels. Where do you believe this investigation stands, and where should it go?
Well, all these things that you just referred to are true, of course, as fact. But sometimes the fact sometimes misses the more effective fact. What this is, as you recall from the Copenhagen period, where the Queen of England was pushing for a very, 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 very green policy, a policy of mass death, in point of fact, that what has happened essentially is that we have followed her policy, which was very explicit in the second phase of her green madness, and that was to reduce the population of the planet from approximately 7 billion persons to approximately 1. Everything that is done by Obama in particular follows the Queen's policy. He is himself a queen, in a sense. His policy, he's just the queen of the queen. And what we're seeing is genocide in the United States against citizens in the United States, systemic genocide, not just going out and killing people, which the Obama administration does. That's one of their fait accompli. But what is intended is the destruction of civilization, to reduce the human population as rapidly as possible from 7 billion persons to approximately 1. We are now seeing how that is done. Is being done in the United States against the people of the United States, as against Europeans and others, of reducing the population as rapidly as possible. Green is going backwards. Green is Satan in action. And Obama is nothing but one of Satan's errand boys. And that's not an exaggeration. That's not a euphemism. This is the effect of the Obama regime and of the Bushes before. I'm talking about several Bush families, Bush leaguers. And they were all of this nature. They were all against mankind. And George Bush Sr., now was a feeble man, and the Bush, his son, the double idiot, and then this creep. These are instruments of evil. The effect is to mass murder of the population. It's there, it's happening, it's accelerating. And anybody who denies that is just more than poorly informed. And that's what we're in. It's not these little things. These little things are the fruits of the tree, the fruit that drops from the tree. But what is the tree? The tree is epitomized by the Queen of England. And unless we take that on, it's not a matter of who you criticize. It's a matter of who you're willing to take on, what you're willing to take on. And we have to rid the transatlantic region of everything that represents that Anglo-American tendency. Because it's an extension of what, in fact, if you look at history, the Queen represents originally, or fairly originally, the Roman Empire in its decline. It represents the Venetian systems, two of them. It takes the super Venetian system, which became the British Empire. And the British system is a world empire. Now, an empire is not unless they are a nation state. The British are a nation state, quite a state indeed. But the British Queen represents an empire. You look at the collection, the hoodlums that collect in all this ceremony and dress and fanfare when they have these meetings of the great oligarchical, and what are they? They're all the same system. They're all the same system. They've gone on from generation to degeneration to degeneration. They're the same system. The Queen is not a figure of the British United Kingdom. The British Empire represents a vast empire. 30 to 40% of the entire population is directly ruled by the Queen and her empire. And it's that empire which is pushing the policy of genocide in practice. Whether they name it genocide or not is irrelevant. In practice, it is genocide. It is systemically genocide. And the problem here is that we refuse to face reality. People are scared. They don't want to say, don't say that, don't say that, don't say that. You'll get us in trouble. But if you don't do something to that effect, you're in worse than trouble. You can lose the human species' existence from this kind of nonsense. I don't think that will happen. But I know the threat is there, and it can happen. And we have to be serious about that.